Okay, so in this video we're going to go through the management of results. So when I say that, what I'm referring to is basically the toolbar that you have available to you within the search. Assuming that we're now at a point where you have established the criteria that you wanted to enter as part of finding all of the records from the search result. What we're doing now is we're going into the search results and we're managing this list of records. We're managing the result in here. So we have options available from this toolbar that we'll work through in this video. We've covered the criteria section as part of one of the first videos when we were going through the navigation of the search. So this encompasses there being an ability to save a default set of criteria, obviously clearing and resetting that criteria as well. So that's the option of the first side. But if we move on to save searches as one of a key component and a good starting place. So in terms of your search result, you have your list of results. What you have is the option to be able to save that search result. So we'll do that here. And when you save a search result, what you're doing is you're saving not just the list of records, but you're also saving the criteria that was associated with this list of records as well. So it's you're essentially you're saving the search as a whole file. But if we go into open save searches, and this is obviously available not just within the results area, but just the search area across the board, you can go to open save searches, and this will list out all of the searches that you have saved against your user profile. There are other searches as well, other search types that it's worth explaining about also. But firstly, just to go through these list of options that you have here. So firstly, you've got there is scope, and that's just obviously the different entity types that you can have saved searches against. In this scenario, we've got more candidate searches than anything else, and we've got one contact there. But if you had many different types of saved searches, you could obviously switch the scope to look at a specific search type there or search scope. The type options that are available for searches, you've got the save search as the prominent search type when you go into this area, but you also have a recent selection here. So recent is essentially a track record of the searches that you've run over a long period. Basically, it's an ongoing track of different searches that you've run. And what that allows you to do is essentially look back on searches that you ran on the system over various periods with a view to returning to those searches if you want to. If you can think back to a search that you ran a couple of days ago but you forgot to save it, this is how you could access that search and access that result count perhaps that you're working through. Obviously, the ideal is that you run a search, you save that search if you want to retain access to those results. But in the instance where you don't have that as an option, this is where you would go to. So that's the recent list that you have there. What you also have is the option to view spec CV. So when you are sending speculative CVs to a multitude of records to a mass of individuals, what you do as part of that process is essentially create a search result called a spec CV send search result. So that's when you're against a candidate record and you look to go and send a spec CV to multiple candidates, you're essentially creating a record in here. So this is just another place where you can access that, but you can also access this from the candidate record as well. You can have all as an option there and it will give you everything, but it is better to segregate them up into their appropriate types so you know what you're looking at. What you also have the option to as well is to access other users' search results as well. So if you are working in unison with another user through a list of search results, it's possible to do that and access that person's results. Also, there is a user group setting in terms of your ability to delete other users' search results as well. But if we go back to my users here, my results, and I just cover the delete function. So this can work either in batch or just individually. Essentially, you select the search result that you want to delete, press delete there, delete one search, delete or cancel when you hit delete there, and the selected search result will be removed. Simple as that really in terms of deleting a search result. But if we want to open up an existing search result. We'll click on an example search result here. And then that opens up obviously the result itself for you to then work through. The next point to cover is with regards to adding a search result to an existing search result. So in this scenario, you've got a list of records, but it'll be useful to add these records to an existing search result. And in this scenario, you've got this option here of add current results to saved search. So what you do is essentially go to add current results to saved search. It takes you to the list of searches that you have on the system. And if we pick on this search, you'll notice that we have 5 results within this result count of this search. If we click on this search, what that then does is it adds those 3 results back to that search, and then it just takes you back to the search that you've already had open previously. So you're back to your 3 results that you had before, but that search that you selected a moment ago has now been updated with those additional 3. To prove that, if we go to open save searches, what you can see here is that the example saved search for demo is now at 8. And if we open up that saved search, you'll see that those additional records were added to that search result. You can see down here. So that's a process that you would follow if you were building a search result to be populated, as and when you run other searches and you find other records that you think might be good for that search result to be built up over time. That's how you would use that feature there. In reverse to that workflow, what you can also do is include a saved search into an existing search result. So if you have a search result that you're working on and you want to bring in a saved search into this search result and combine the two, for example, then what you can do is off the menu here, you've got an option here of add a saved search to the current results. So we've currently got 3 results within here. We'll hit add saved search to current results. It then opens up our saved searches. And then as I say, in reverse to what we did previously, we'll select this search result again, and this time the search result will be added into our existing search. So we've now gone to 8 results, and we've got an overview here of obviously our existing beginning records plus the new records that have obviously been added as well. So that covers saving a search, opening a saved search, adding your current results to a saved search, and then adding a saved search to your current results. Moving on to view records, and there are several items or several points to cover in relation to this feature. Essentially, view records is an option that's available to you once you have selected a row from within the search results. So on selection of that row, that view records option will become available. And this is available on the basis of a single selection or a multiple selection. And what you can do is by hitting view records, it will take you to the, in this instance, the candidate entity, so that you have access to that search result. And on all of those candidate options, you'll have the option to go back to the search. But if you've selected multiple candidates, you also have these arrows that are available up here, and they allow you to navigate through the search results, or at least the selected records from the search results, to view those different candidate records. And then at any time you can obviously hit go back to search, and it will take you back to the main search results where you came from originally. So that's the selected records option or view records option. But what you also have is the ability simply to select or click on the row of the record, the hyperlink that's on that row, and it will open up the candidate record in this instance just in a new tab. As you would expect it to. So on selection of a specific item within the row, it will open up that option as well as an alternative method to viewing the record. But also what you have available to you, if you just want to look at a summarized overview on what's happening with those records, you can use this option here called summary view. So on selection of whatever rows you would like to view, you can select summary view, and then that will bring out a panel which allows you to scroll through the different records that you've highlighted and view some summarized information about that record. And the options in terms of which fields you view in this panel are available to you within the user settings area. So it's worth setting up that option so that you have the ability to be able to view a kind of summarized overview right into that record. If you want to work through the search result, making phone calls, you can create histories from that summary panel without having to actually go into the record itself. And also at any time, you could always just select or hit the hyperlink there, and that will just take you to the record. So you've got several options there in terms of how you go about viewing the records rather than just from the method that is highlighted just here. And it's worth just obviously covering that just so it's clear when we're referring to viewing records. The next item along is the view text option, and this is only really relevant if you have run a text criteria as part of your search results. So as covered in the previous video when we went through text criteria searching, this is the option that you will use when you want to view your text criteria within the candidate's CV, so you can see where the text criteria is present within that document and highlighted there. But if you've done a field-based search or a radius search or skill criteria search, this isn't a relevant option to use as part of managing the results. But that's the view text option. So the next option along is selected records. To point out the obvious, we firstly need to select some records in order for any of these options to be landable. So if I'll pick on these three again here, and then just mouse over there. So to point note, first point to note is that we've got two key kind of communication workflows that are available here: email and SMS. If we select email, I'll just go through this quickly. This works very similar but slightly different to how an email form would work if you were running it from an individual entity, in that obviously in this scenario when you're sending an email, you could be sending to several hundred different recipients, and in that process you don't want the email to be sent in real time within the UI. You want it to be sent and processed in the background. So what we have is a kind of a bulk mail management mechanism that caters from that queues up the emails. Also, as a point of note, an email address is sent individually. So for every email address that is in the to field, that represents an individual email address or an individual email that would be sent to that address. So there wouldn't be a case of an email going out where all of the recipients in the to field would see each other's email address. They're all broken up in the way that the privacy feature would work on version 6 against the Outlook add-in. But if I just demonstrate sending the email in here just to show how that works, in terms of the different functionalities with regards to the calling of a template, merge fields, attachments, that all works as it does against an individual record. When you hit send, what you'll see is that email disappear promptly. That would be the case if it was working against 3 records or 103. It would just process it that quickly. Because the email is now being processed in the background using that mechanism, and then what will happen is a notification will be triggered when that bulk send is processed, so that you're able to have confirmation that that email was sent. So what we'll do is we'll move on to the next item, and then I'll revisit the notification when that comes through. The next item along is the SMS feature. So that works in the same format as it does against an individual entity record. The recipients will be listed below, their associated mobile numbers displayed. Instances where recipient doesn't have a mobile number, they'll be taken out of the loop in terms of being able to send this SMS. The recipient count will display the number of people the SMS will go to. You can obviously enter in your test message and hit send, and then that will send off the SMS to those records. So what we can see now is that notification has come through. And what you can see by clicking on that bell icon is the panel come out, and it just advised that the bulk email successfully sent to those 3 records that we sent earlier. So that's the notification that would be generally displayed. It would just advise that the email was sent successfully, and obviously to the number of records that it went. What I've also queued up here is an example notification of a scenario where some of the records worked fine, but others perhaps failed. So that could be instances where the email address is invalid, there wasn't a response from the recipient's say domain name or IP address or something on those lines. And in those instances, you get bounce backs and failures. So what we have is an error report option that you have that you can click on here, and then that will allow you to view which records weren't able to be processed as part of that bulk send. So that's how the email process will work when you're processing a bulk email from a search result. The next point to cover from selected records are the flag settings. So this is a way in which you can go about highlighting different rows based on the key that's been set up. This is all set up within admin under flag settings. What you essentially have is the means to be able to highlight rows, certain colors, so that you're able to sort of distinguish and break up the different search results or rows within the search result to highlight where they are as you've worked through it. So if you wanted to highlight certain results for benefit or not for benefit, essentially to advise that perhaps certain candidates aren't appropriate or some are, then this is a method in which you can do that. You can obviously hit remove flag there to take away the flag options there. So flag settings are there as an option to be used for highlighting rows within search results. The next item along is the option to hide and unhide results. So it is an option to select various different rows within the search and have the option to hide those. So that doesn't remove them from the result, it just simply hides them from view, and you'll be able to see from the table description that's beneath that you've got 5 entries there, but you've got 3 that are hidden. The result count will update as well in reflection of how many results are physically visible to the user, but you'll have essentially those 3 records just hidden from view. And anytime what you can then do is just return to those records and just hit unhide, and then obviously those records will then return to the view. So you've got hide and unhide as options available there. The next option available is the ability to remove a result option or a row in the search result from the result entirely. So remove results. If we select our example row or an example row of selected records there, you've got remove from results, and that will literally remove the record from the results. So that's not a hide. That result is now removed and gone from the search. So the found count will update to 7, the table will update to 7, and that result is now gone from the search result. The next point to cover relates to the ability to archive or unarchive a record. So this is obviously run from the selected records view. You've got the option there for archive records or unarchive records, and you can do this either as a single selection or in multiples against the search result. Now, your ability to be able to view a archived record from within a search result is going to be dependent on the criteria setting for include archive being ticked. If this is not ticked, as I'll do it there, then when you archive a record, that record's going to disappear from view. So I'll return to the search results and archive a couple of records here. What we'll do is we'll archive Michael and James here. Get asked to confirm that you wish to do this. We'll hit yes. That archives the records, and then those are removed from view. Now, if we go back to the criteria and tick this include archived option, what we can see is that found count increasing back to 7, and those coming through again. And then what we'll do is for Michael and James, we'll unarchive those records, so they're back to being normal records again. And that's how you would unarchive or archive a record from a search result. The next point to cover is the ability to delete a record from a search result. Now, this is going to be dependent on whether or not you are given authorization to do so. There is a user group permission that defines whether or not you have the ability to delete records from a search result, as it's obviously potentially harmful. Yeah, you have the option here to delete a record. So on selection of a record, that option becomes available. When you have the option there to, or when you click on the option to delete records, you're going to be given this alert advising what it's about to do as part of deleting a record, also that it cannot be undone, and also that it may take a few minutes to process. It gives you that warning because you could be running this request against a large number of records, and so as a caveat, it gives you that warning. But otherwise, the actual deletion process itself won't take more than a few seconds to run through. But you obviously have the option there to proceed with that deletion or to cancel. I'm not going to run through the deletion in this instance, but you could hit delete there to actually delete the record, and that'll obviously remove that row from the search result view. The last point to cover relates to the ability to add to favorites. So this is a bulk method in which you could add a number of records to favorites. So if you can select the rows that you're interested in adding to favorites for future access of selected records, you hit add to favorites, and what it will do is it'll advise in bulk how it's gone about processing that request. So you've got favorites updated, and it'll advise how many was successful, whether or not any were already in your favorites area, and how many may have failed for whatever reason as part of that update. But essentially, you should just get an advisement or confirmation that favorite went through as to be expected, and then favorites are available down here off the left-hand navigation, and you can simply view those favorites within this area here now as well. So it's just another way of accessing those at a later date. So the next item along is requirement link, and this is requirement link is when you're against a candidate search. Specifically, we'll go through the alternative option when you're in a contact search, which is a candidate link. But with requirement link, what we're essentially doing is we're associating a requirement with this search result with the view to then shortlisting or longlisting these candidates into that requirement. So to do that, it's a relatively straightforward process. Off requirement link, you've got link this search to a requirement. You select that option. That will take you to a selection screen where you can then look up for a requirement. And then on selection of a requirement, it will then take you back to the search now with that requirement now associated with the candidate search. So that's now linked, and you've got an option there to go to the linked requirement from that option as well. So what you now have the option by doing that is you can select various different candidate records, go to requirement link, and you can opt to long those selected candidates to the requirement. And then it'll give you a confirmation there advising that the requirement is updated. So you've long listed those candidates, and you've got an option now to go to that requirement if you wish, or just press OK and you'll stay in the search. And obviously with this option, you've got the option there for long listing, shortlisting, and sending the candidate CV. So those are the options for requirement link. Whereas you can link a requirement to a candidate search, an alternative option when you're doing a contact search is that you have a candidate link as a replacement to that. And what that allows you to do is to select a range of different contact records and then send a respective CV of a candidate to those contacts. So in order to do that, similar to the requirement link option, you would hover over candidate link, and you've got link search to candidate as the option there, and you can select that option. You'll then look up the candidate that you want to link to the search, hit select, and that candidate is now linked to that search. You've also got the option to link another candidate, which is essentially to replace that candidate you've just linked it to. And you've got obviously the option to go to that linked candidate as well. But on selection of a range of contacts you'd like to send a candidate CV to in a respective manner, you can select those options, go over candidate link, and you've got send spec CV to contacts, and you select that option there, and the email will come down, and then obviously from there you would send the spec to send email based on the templates that you have, or the email that you want to send there. So that's the candidate link, and obviously also the requirement link. Staying with the candidate search, the next item along is the add option. So this is the ability to add additional records individually to a search result. That's particularly useful if you're trying to build a hot list of records, if you like, based around a certain criteria or a certain category in relation to those records. But this works quite simply by selecting add. It will bring down the lookup partial view. You can look up a record, select the record, and then it will be added to the search as an additional record to that search. So that's add, look up, select record, and then it's added to the search, and obviously the found count will increase. The additional result will be added to the search, and then obviously you save the search and continue to build on the list of records that you have associated with it. So that add option is available from the candidate, the contacts, the candidate, the company, and the contacts in that format where a partial view comes down. Against a requirement, it's still using the selection screen option, but we're looking to implement it so that it's also in this kind of drop-down format. So that may be in place by the time that you see this video. But that covers the add option. The next item along is going to be dependent on your permission as to whether or not you have access to it, and that's the export option. So this works simply by exporting the search result into an Excel spreadsheet so that you can then download it and open it from there. So just to demonstrate that in action, you can either select specific items and then have export selected, which is that you're exporting just those items that you've selected within the search result, or you can just hit export all, and then that will export the search into a CSV file. And obviously you can then click on to open that. It'll open up Excel, and it'll contain specifically the column contents of that search result. So you then have the search in a column, sorry, in an Excel spreadsheet that you can then work with. Again, that's going to be specific to the user permissions that you've been granted within access to the system. So it may be that this is grayed out if you don't have access to that. But if you did, that is how this function would work. But that's the export feature. The last point to cover was actually covered in the one of the earlier videos with regards to general navigation, and that's the options. So the options, just to repeat what was basically run through in that video, the options essentially dictate the columns that you see actually within the search result itself. So on selecting options, it will take you through to a list of the available fields which can be shown. That list could be fairly exhaustive. In terms of the different options, they're essentially all of the fields that are associated from the data dictionary against that entity. But if you wanted to add any additional fields to the column, then you can do so, and you can drag and drop the column ordering of the fields so that you can see the data that you need to see from within that search result. So you would select back when you're done with moving around and selecting those options, and then obviously you'll see those options appear as you'd expect them to. So that covers options, and that's the final element as part of the run through in relation to the management of results. So we'll now go on to the final video, which is in relation to search settings.